Going now. Good morning. Apologies for the slightly late start. We've discovered the new Facebook Live technology requires you to connect to it and log in prior to going live. Anyway, it's just gone 9 o'clock. It's Thursday, so it can only be Coffee Kickstarter, and we're the Property Angels. Property Angels was founded by a former solicitor, accountant and police detective who saw the need to professionalise the industry. Using their knowledge, experience and proven track record, they endeavour to guide, support and help those new to property, providing practical tools, skills and the tool set to enable them to thrive and achieve their potential in a safe manner. Now, the Property Angels Coffee Kickstarter series aims to inspire both those new and already established and on their journey in the property industry by sharing real life stories of practitioners actually walking the talk. And today we're delighted to have with us Tristan from Zebra Properties. But first, we'd like to introduce ourselves as we always do. So I'm the one that used to be the former accountant. My name's Karen Stanbridge, and I worked initially as a fully qualified chartered management accountant. I then went on to work in project and program management and strategic business consultancy in big blue chip industry. But I escaped that land in May 2015, taking with me the skills I'd accrued during a 25-year tenure and using them to build a property business from solid foundations, crafting those solid foundations, having a how-to blueprint to take me to my destination known. I also help other property professionals craft plans so they can start from those same solid foundations. Plus, I work with high net worth individuals, helping them to build property portfolios. That's enough about me. Now, Sarah, the former solicitor, she's just had a bambino, so she's not with us today, but we'll give a brief intro on Sarah, which Sam will cover off. So Sam, over to you.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, so we've got Sarah Smith is one of the hosts of Property Angels with us. She's had a baby just a week ago, so she's a bit tucked up and busy doing that at the moment. But Sarah has, she was a former solicitor, and she has been investing in property for more than 15 years. She started out as an accidental landlord. So she bought her property, she wanted to move on to another property, and her broker said, well, you can keep the original one and just buy the next one, pull the equity out and move on. And that's what she did slowly and surely for a number of years. And then she accelerated that probably within the last sort of 7 years and has grown a portfolio of HMOs and single buy-to-lets. Her main focus at the moment is buy-to-lets because she likes those because they are straightforward and simple, and that's what she's very keen to have in her life at the moment. She's going to be very busy for the next couple of years, I'm sure. I won't tell her it's 18 years at least. So she just needs a property portfolio that's going to be simple and just gets on in the background and pays you that ongoing income month in, month out. So that's a little bit about Sarah. A little bit about me. My name is Sam Beddoe. My company, I have a couple of property companies. The first one is a serviced accommodation business, which has had all sorts of ups and downs in the last year, as I'm sure many can appreciate. And I have a development company, which is Revive Holdings. And what I do there is use permitted development rights and convert old, tatty old, sad buildings into lovely new homes for people. And that's what I enjoy, seeing that massive transformation from something that's finished with its original purpose and could be changed into a new purpose. I've also got a non-property business which gives me ongoing residual income, so it's nice to have that in the background as well. And as Karen said, my previous career was 23 years as a police detective, and I had lots of great experiences in that role, but it was time 5 years ago to move away from there and do what I do in property full time. So that's a little bit about me. So let's talk about Tristan then. Tristan, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
You've got a great backstory, and I love what you're doing in property at the moment, and I love the way that you're so creative in what you do. So for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about you and what you do in property.
Go for it. So I started off in property probably now on for about 8 years ago. And as I mentioned in my little brief, I used to be a water skiing instructor, and I was literally teaching out in Greece. And one thing I got taught when I was out there was talk to everyone, always have a smile on your face, because the most interesting person is themselves. And so with that, I spoke to every single person that would get on my boat, because they can't go anywhere else. And at the end of the week, I'd always ask them for their business cards. And so there's one chap that came out on holiday, Alex from Posh Pads, and he said, "Oh, I'm actually just down the road from the university you're at, and you should come have a look around what we do in our property portfolio." And long and short says, there's not much money in marketing, there's more in property. And having always been a little bit entrepreneurial, that's pretty much what it takes for me to go from marketing to property. So I then moved down to Southampton. Initially starting with a few viewings, various other bits. And within the space of a few months, I was going around looking at about 22, bleary-eyed, looking around all these big, huge HMOs and properties, and starting to work out what we can do with them, how we can rearrange them, and turn them into really nice houses. And from there, it kind of accelerated to the extent that I was their investment manager. And without even knowing it, I was doing deal sourcing, finding investors, project managing, and putting everything together. So we were taking it from literally someone turning up and saying, "I've got a bit of cash, so here's our broker, here's our solicitor," start to finish. Did that for quite a while, and then got to the stage where I thought, you know what, let's move up to London. I got quite a few friends up there. Took a rent-to-rent portfolio from, I think it was 6 houses to 28 in the space of 12 months, all in kind of anything from Kensington, where I'm pretty sure I've done the UK's probably most expensive HMO, about £9 million with 9 bedrooms over, what was it, about 6-7 floors. And then to doing stuff in Fulham, Putney, Clapham, where we ended up. I originally had the intro, but I then went on holiday, and it was literally a mansion. It was 4 floors, had a spiral cellar for wine in the bottom of it. And we took on all these magnificent properties, built a portfolio out from them. And then I decided, let's go work for something a little bit different, and something where it's a lot more creative, and somewhere where you can do something that's a little bit less blueprinty, or stampy. So we went to a freehold ground rent investor. And freeholds are the piece of land that's left over after a development's been done of, say, a block of flats. So like Sam, I'm sure you'll know, obviously, where you have your industrial conversions and you do a title split, you end up with the ground rent at the end of it. And the thing about ground rents, there's no right move for them, there's no on the market, there's nowhere to find these to be able to buy them. The only way to be able to find them is to track down what's been shifting, what's been selling, any properties or buildings where they might have them. So we then went doing a lot of direct to vendor stuff, finding people who didn't even know they owned property, didn't even know they even had land, because they may have done this 15, 20 years ago. They may have moved out of the house where they actually owned a freehold, but didn't realise they owned a freehold. So did a lot of that, and that's when we started doing things like, which is a fairly advanced strategy, where we started doing back-to-backs. So the stuff that we didn't want to hold on to, we'd agree the sale up front. And so we'd agree, say, I don't know, maybe buy something £50,000. And then we'd agree with a buyer at £75,000, and we'd sit ourselves in the middle. And so within a space of, say, maybe a week or maybe 5 days of total work, you'd be able to take £20,000–£25,000 out between deals. And we started doing more and more of those, and we're also building up our portfolio at the same time. And it got to a stage where there was 1 or 2 deals that we did that, we were taking £100,000 out in between with about 7 days work. And I had the light bulb moment. I was like, there's something else to this property that I don't know. And so I sat there, and that's where, at that point, my girlfriend asked me if I'd like to move down to Southampton. And I started thinking, you know what, let's go do this thing for myself full time, and started with the Zebra.
Awesome. So you've not lots of people that we talk to have gone a quite traditional route with their property journey. You know, they've started with a couple of buy-to-lets, and they might have done a refurb and an extension, and then they might have done a split into a couple of flats from a house and that sort of thing. You've gone a completely different route here, haven't you? A much more creative route. What you've had some experience on the job. Have you done any formal training as well?
So when it came to training, I sat there and thought, a lot of the stuff where I've done it on the job for someone else, they're great at kind of giving you what I call like the blocks, the building, the bricks, the blocks, everything else are kind of the main core bits to be able to do and repeat. But they lack any of the mortar or anything to stick it together. So I sat there and thought, oh, it can't be that hard to go start your own business, to actually go do it. You know, this property stuff looks pretty easy. And so you're right. What I then did, I then sat there and thought, well, what can I do? How can I learn the bits that I don't know, what's missing? And I stumbled across Susanna Cole who's got loads of YouTube series and everything else. And at Christmas 2018, she put out this beginner's property bundle. And on that, it had tons of videos of basically all of the courses and everything else they did for their weekends and all their weekend training. And then also the background material and everything else. And a lot of it, as I went through, I was like, well, that's obvious. But then there's all the little crystal bits, the little extras, and there's tons of little big pieces of information that I hadn't even thought of. And then, you know, there's bits that she spoke about. And I was like, well, there's something else hidden in there. And then wrote it down, went off, researched it. And yeah. And so the creative kind of side of things and learning how to do that, a lot of that initially I saw with the guys that I was working at. And then courtesy of kind of starting my own business a little bit on a shoestring, I sat there and thought, how else can we do the larger properties, the larger deals that other people don't want to do, but not necessarily using my cash.
And have you achieved that?
So at the moment, there's one deal that we've got one deal that's going through that was a little bit tentative, but it should go through, where we're going to be purchasing it with an exchange with a delayed completion. And the idea being that we'll exchange. We've then got a 3-month gap to do a refurb, to then be able to take it on. And we've agreed to pay we've agreed to pay a rent of £700 throughout that period. So if he's on here listening, then he'll know which property it is. And that should allow us to be able to allow us to move the value of the property quite significantly from start to finish. And then other stuff, you got to keep plugging away, and it will end up hitting. It's just the knowledge and the ability to do it.
Mm. Out of your previous experience, there's been a variety of things that you've done there. Which was the bit that really excited you and got you out of bed every day?
You make a very good point. So I got excited more by the idea of a deal and what's going to be coming through and how I can structure something or how I can make something work, whether it's going to be for me or whether it's going to be for someone else, and what we can do in between. So I'll get out and I'll just sit there and think. So Tuesday was a prime example. I'm also slightly hands-on with coding a little piece of software and reverse engineered a way to be able to find all properties that are over 100 meters squared within a drawn area. And then that way, and then I can also find all the properties now that have been put on the market to sell but didn't sell. So then you can then target the ones that are 100 meters plus in a certain area, and then you can then send letters to all of the vendors saying you wanted to sell but you didn't. Can I take the property off you? And it's then, so bits like that is just the creative way of trying to attack things and pick up deals that other people haven't even looked of, thought of, noticed. And having that upper hand and upper edge, that's what excites me.
What's the key thing about the 100 meters squared?
Pardon? So 100 meters squared, the idea is, it's either way, it's a size where you can split it into 2 flats, because you can then hit the minimum space standards, which are going to be about 50 meters squared each. And then there'll be the differential in the value. Or where I'm looking for HMOs as well, it's the size difference where you'll be able to take a property from maybe say a 4-bedroom or a 3-bedroom property up to something like a five-bedroom property and you tie it around that.
Okay. Good. Have you done your wealth dynamics, Tristan?
Oh, I haven't.
You should. It'd be interesting to know what you are. Obviously, I guess you're a deal maker.
Yeah, so I was wondering whether I might be a star, Karen, but yeah, I kind of, we sat down in PIN once, and yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what it is.
I think you should do it, because I think you're probably more on the bottom left, because of the detail in the data. You love that, and the deal. So do it. If you buy the online book, Roger Hamilton, can't remember what the name of the title is, but look at the book, look it up. You buy the online book and there's a code in there, so you can buy it on Kindle for like £6.
Okay.
There's a code in it. Give it a go.
I'll have a look.
Yeah. So you transitioned from part-time to full-time to doing your own business rather than working for these property investors. How did that go? Because you said you sort of did it on a bit of a shoestring.
Yeah. So
how did that work?
So probably it would have been, I think, start of probably about 2000, maybe it was 2019. Yeah, I think it was started 2019, not 18. Anyway, I sat down and I had a chat with my girlfriend, and she'd said, look, it'd be nice for you to move down and move in with me. And we've been together quite a while. I was like, yeah, that's it. So it was then I sat down and thought, okay, I need to make a business out of this. What can I do? So I started saving every which penny out of every salary, every rental payment, everything else that's coming in, because I'm fortunate enough to already have 2 rental properties to start off with. So that was really shoehorning and saving as much as I possibly could and put aside to be able to have the cash flow to kind of get my business going, get everything off the ground. And it would be that I would finish work at probably about 6 o'clock, get the train across London, whether it's on the underground or above, but anyway, it makes a difference. And then 40 minutes of doing that, I'd be listening to Susanna Cole or reading a book or whatever else was going along, taking notes, taking photos of pages, whatever else, something that was going to be useful. I then get home and I'm great. I would love to think I'm great at batch cooking, but there's only so many days you can eat chili con carne on the trot. And then I get home and then I then sit down and probably then do another, from probably about 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night, I do another 3-4 hours of working on my business, getting everything in the right place, setting things up. And that would happen probably 3 times a week. And then if I had any extra time at the weekend, also whilst trying to have, friends and a girlfriend and trying to juggle social life at the same time. Mm. So then trying to shoehorn it all in to make it all fit and achieve something. And slowly, it's a bit like if you read The Slight Edge, it's all about doing that little bit extra every day. And it's not that I was going to be able to do something overnight, but every time you're working on it, it's then kind of heading in the right direction. And that would be from, I think at one point I was going to maybe 4 or 5 different networking meetings in London, because that's where I was living, a month. And in doing that, that just meant that you've got the ability to be able to go talk to people, understand whatever else. And I remember that I think probably the first network meeting I went to, I turned up a pin in Clapham and I looked and I thought, oh, but, this is all quite salesy. Where do I have to run to the back of the room, whatever else. But and all these guys getting on stage, all presenting their local case studies from Mastermind, various other bits. And people in the room were telling me, I'm an investor, I'm looking at doing X, Y, Z. And I was like, and I naively just went, I was like, well, I do property, will you give me some money? And I quickly learned that's not the way it works. But so it was just that endless kind of incremental bit to get to a point where I just sat there, was like, okay, by I think July I'd bought a van, and then we covered it in zebra print and everything had the logo on it. And then in August it was, well, you've got to hit the ground running now, so get going.
What's been your biggest success to date?
Yeah, pardon?
What's been your biggest success to date?
So there's two sides of it. One's kind of the strategy, and the way to do it is direct to vendor and empties. So I sat there, and initially, the reason I say this is a success is I spent a lot of time trying to do everything and chase that shiny penny. And as soon as I started, with the guys I used to work for, we always used to do direct to vendor because they wouldn't have a price or a value engineered in their head before you want to talk to them. So whilst whenever I do make an offer, I do say that you might get more elsewhere, but I'll be open and I'll say, this is what I'm looking to do. I'll explain what I'm up to. By doing it direct to vendor and targeting empty properties, you are going for stuff that no one else is looking at or doesn't want. So whether that's looking on Rightmove and Zoopla and you just find rental properties that no one else is, they're just sitting empty and targeting those, or if it's walking the streets, which I've turned into a process, which if anyone wants to see me on YouTube in a zebra print shirt walking up and down the street, I explain how to find empty properties, and I turned it into a process that I've recruited someone on Facebook to do, so they'll go do it for me. But the empties is where you then end up getting the major uplift. And I mean, I think one of the, like, if you look at an empty property and looking at what other people don't see, is the best way to do it. And Swanmore Avenue, which is was a 1-bedroom flat in Sholing, Southampton. It was completely being ripped out. The carpets, everything else had been taken out. The kitchen was falling apart. And the first thing I did was I asked the agent, I said, what's the property number? Because then I looked at the EPC. So this one did have an agent. Looked at how big it was. And as soon as I knew how big it was in floor space, which was 50 square meters, I knew I could turn it into a 2-bedroom flat. Yeah. So on the day that I walked in, did the viewing, there was probably about another 4 people afterwards. And as soon as I walked out, I made an offer on the property by email, gave all my solicitor's details, everything else, because I'd done the research beforehand. Then came back and they said best and finals. And I said, okay. And I did my numbers. And this is where someone taught me a while back, use random numbers. But I used my deal calculator and I put in an offer of £92,050. The lady on the other end of the phone squirmed. She was like, are you sure you want to put that in? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And I was like, are you sure? Anyway, came to the end of the sale and evidently my offer was £50 higher than the last one. So, but, pardon?
It's that eBay trick.
Yeah. And so with that property, we kind of purchased it just as lockdown happened, which was absolute pain in the bum. But it took about 6 weeks to turn it round. And we've got a 20% margin on it. So we're selling it for, got agreed at 147. The target was 150. And so we would have made a 20% profit margin on it. So yeah, so that was quite, I think it's quite a small deal, but it's one that's worked quite well.
But if you work that out on actual length of time that it's taken you and your time and effort as well to make that 20% profit, if you multiplied that by how many weeks in the year, that would be quite nice, wouldn't it?
So, and I think that's where down the line, I'm going to start looking at trying to do bigger deals or multiple deals in the same building, because you've then got one building team to manage and run through rather than having lots of little ones.
Yeah. Is there any projects that haven't gone so well? We've all had them.
Definitely. So there's two, but the one that didn't necessarily go so well, but it also looks rather nice, is Johnson Street, which is my HMO in Southampton. And again, that was one of them, but that was sitting empty. And I put a floor plan, put planning in, put a complete detailed specification together, everything step by step to do it. But where it fell down on itself was I needed to have a chat, and this is something I now do with builders. I needed to have a chat with the builder up front to see what the expectations were, because I negotiated down on price, which I thought we'd come to a fair price and something we'd agree on. But in doing so, he'd actually removed the project management from it. So there was no longer a project manager on site. I turned up and just said, just to check everything was going to plan, everything else. And every time I turned up, it was in disarray. And my quote and the way I put everything across, so I said, here's a list of all the materials I'll include. Everything else that's not on that list, you include. And he turned around and said to me, and it was never on an email or never anywhere else. He just turned and said, no, my price is labour only. So suddenly, you know, what you had agreed as a cost or whatever else, the price is just, you know, I think the initial budget was about, and this is quite tight, but it was about 35,000, went up to about 45,000, where there was additional costs, overruns in time, and things that just weren't checked through. So, and so, yeah, I've learned that you just need to have a chat through at the very beginning. And it was also like the boiler, we thought the boiler would be fine. It had a massive carbon monoxide leak on it. So we ended up having to replace the boiler after we'd done all the work to take out a unit and everything else. So 2 lessons really from that is get a gas safety certificate at the very beginning and check the boiler actually works. And otherwise budget to replace it. Make sure you communicate with your builder. And now my final lesson from it all is communicate with the builder or get yourself a project manager, because if someone else can take the stress off you, then you can then go out and do more deals at the same time.
Definitely. Well, would you use JCT contracts in the future?
I should do.
Yeah.
So
even for the little projects?
Pardon?
Even for a small project?
I probably should do.
Yeah.
So, but my goal is, my next goal, the person I'd like to employ is a project manager. Yeah. And so that's something that they would then kind of manage for me, because where it's been the very startup, the first year of doing everything, I've ended up taking the reins, doing everything. Yeah. But it's going to be best if I focus on what I do best and pass on the bits that I'm not so good for other people.
But personally, I feel sometimes if you start the way you've said there, you get lots of learnings and you understand stuff. So you understand what you are prepared to hand over and what you are prepared to hold on to responsibility for. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, is it? No. I think that anyone listening should appreciate that. You know, sometimes you need to have all of that experience of being hands-on to know what bits you want to be handing back to somebody else next time.
And it's also, as I've done this and other bits with the business, I've noticed what swallows my time. And you know, everyone says you want to, you know, work on your business rather than in your business. But when you're getting started, you need to kind of, you're obviously going to be working it. You should also slowly start being putting processes in place, and anything that you're repeating, taking notes of what you're repeating, how you're doing it. So then at some point you can pass it on, even if you pass it on to a VA or whatever else. But
what systems do you do to record those processes?
So I've been using, it's really, well, I think it's fairly simple, but I use Camtasia, so just a screen recorder, record all the steps that I do. So if I turn around and I'll, say for example, find a way of finding empty properties or whatever else, I create a video that demonstrates from start to finish how to do that. And then I'll have I had a VA, a chap called AD, who was very good. And then I would get him to do the process and then also create a Word document that explains the process, how to do it. So then you end up with something that demonstrates their understanding, provides the ability for someone else to be able to learn it in future, and you've got a video document. So then between the whole three, if you pass it over to anyone else, you should be able to do it without necessarily training them yourself.
That's brilliant. Yeah. I need to do more of that in my business, but I haven't done. But yeah, that's a great tip for anyone starting out. If you do it from the beginning, little bits at a time, it's not a massive, like you've said about the slight edge. Little bits, it builds up to a great big process manual in the end, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's something I've got more work to do on it. And it's even every time, there's one thing I've been doing this week, and I've repeated it probably about 10 times. I just sat there and I was like, okay, you need to create a video. This is just getting ridiculous.
So what does your VA do for you?
So what he had, so I had him until just before lockdown, and I then got rid of him. So I'm going to be, the idea next is to actually employ someone, but that's going to be a little bit further down the line. But they were doing stuff like if you go out and so you use your mobile phone and you put geotagging on, then every time you take a photo of a property, then it will locate where the property is. So I take a photo of the property. He then goes, so there's a website called Pick2Map. You upload that to Pick2Map, and then it'll tell you where that photo was taken. He'll then work out what the property is, and then goes to something like called property data, and then he'll work out who the owner is, and then puts it all into a spreadsheet. So then we can then do a direct targeted mail out to them. So then it's taking it from me just driving around, or in future, where I've created a process now where someone else can go out and take those photos for me. It takes it from someone taking a photo to actually having data that we can target properties with.
Sounds good. So what do you spend what's a typical business day for you now?
So at the moment, and this will change, but at the moment it's usually 8 till 9 o'clock. I do site visits. So where I'm being a bit more hands-on with project management, and I probably got a little bit burnt with the builders and decided, take all the control back. This is a great idea because that means I can't do that much more stuff. But initially, and also I'm going to be moving from Southampton up to Norwich. So at the moment, I've taken probably a bit more of the reins, and then I'm going to let them go again. So at the moment, 8 till 9, I'll do a site visit and I'll pop in, check everything's going okay. What, if the materials are needed, what's coming behind, which next trade needs to follow in, that side of things. Then 9 till 12 o'clock is usually lead generation and deal analysis to then be able to kind of build up the kind of your pipeline and deal flow. And then 12 till 1 is usually email catch up. So then bang through anything that you've got, just sort everything else out that there's a bit of life admin and stuff in there as well. And then lunchtime. So I have a routine. I always end up going for lunch probably about 1 o'clock. And then in the afternoon, 2 till 3, I'll then organise anything that needs to be sorted out for the sites, which is probably done straight after the site visit to be a bit more productive, but that's kind of where I've got to at the moment. And then in the afternoon, from 3 till 6, it's usually my to-do list. And that's anything where in the daytime I've sat there and thought, that's a good idea, oh, we could do that, or that's something that needs doing, or following up with. And that could be anything from new ideas for lead generation to follow up and chase solicitors, follow up, chase finance, follow up and chase yada, yada, yada. And so it's trying to kind of split the day to make it in segments so you're productive.
Sounds really good and effective. And I like the way, I appreciate what you're saying about your to-do list. But if you're doing the lead generation first thing in the morning, that's about building your business. And you're getting that's having a priority in your day compared to the to-do list. Something I need to switch that around more. And at the moment, my to-do list is in the morning, and sometimes it ends up going into the afternoon, doesn't it?
I found that I'm probably most productive about 9 o'clock onwards, and that's great for doing my to-do list. But then to-do list, you just end up just getting bang, bang, bang through it, and then you get later in the day when you're less productive. And then that's not when that if I'm going through a to-do list and it's your least productive time of the day, then you're going to get through it, but you want to have your focus time on when you're actually going to be producing stuff and your mind is most switched on.
I think you've said some really useful tips there for people on time management and how to sort of plan their business to be most effective with the processes and the planning out of your day, just to make the most of it, because there's going to be lots of people listening who are trying to juggle a job at the same time as developing their property business. So it's really handy. Well done, thank you.
It's even if you're doing it like that with like when I was trying to do things after work, I kind of ended up doing the to-do list, but I'd also put things in my calendar in the evening. So then I know that I've got an hour's gap. Okay, in an hour I'm going to register my domain name. I'm going to set up my email account. I'm going to. And then the next day, I then put in an hour and I write down the task that I want to do in that hour. So then when I look at it, okay, that needs to be done, that needs to be done. And so then when I get to 7 o'clock and I sit there and think, you know what, I could watch, a little bit of TV for an hour.
Yeah. What's your plans for the next 3 to 5 years?
So 3 to 5 years is move more towards developing units, and I think retaining half of them and selling half of them. So one, it's generating equity whilst also generating income. My 1 year target is probably more ambitious, which in the last year, the original goal was to get to 3 HMOs, 3 new HMOs, but there was this weird thing that got in the way with the number 19 in it. So I've ended up kind of focusing more towards trying to get the flips and the projects out. So in the year, I've done the same number of projects, but they're just different types of projects. So next year, the goal is to get 9 additional HMOs. And that's to get the monthly cash flow income to £10,000 a month. And to do that, I worked out, so this is the way that I kind of thought out my goals, but I sat there and thought, I need a number. And, you know, if I go for 5,000, well, that's only realistically probably about 3 times what I've got getting at the moment. So why not just go bigger? Because if you go for something small, then you can hit it. If you go something bigger, then if you don't hit it, then you're a lot closer to doing far more than what you thought you were.
Yeah.
So I went for the 10,000 and I said, well, that's going to be 9 HMOs. And to get 9 HMOs are probably going to have about 30 grand of cash left in each of them. So that means I need £270,000 of equity. To do that, how many flips do I need to do, or refurbs? And so that works out. I also need to do 12 refurbs to do that. And so that means I need to do 21 properties by August next year.
Okay.
But yeah, the goal is probably in the next 3 to 5 years initially is I want to get to 25 HMOs. And so then I've got the ability to, you know, run my business. No, not run, but, you know, run the business rather than being in it. And then get to the stage where I can start doing some of the slightly bigger projects and stuff that's a little bit more sexy. And eventually I want to get to the stage where I own a variety of businesses, and they're kind of all linking together. So then you'll end up with something that is meaningful and you're having a positive influence on other people's lives.
Okay, interesting. What's the best piece of advice that you've been given? You've worked with what sounds like some big investors in London. What's the best piece of advice you've had?
So there's 2, actually. You just made me think of one. One of them was when I was working in Mayfair. We had on the wall, it was, 1 second. I'll come back to it. I'll remember it. It was really useful. The other one was don't sweat the small stuff. So, and sometimes initially when I was very starting up, like probably about 1.5 years ago when I was at home getting everything done, I would very much be completely on top of my numbers, and I keep complete track of what I'm spending, where I'm at, what's going in, what's going out. But as things have started, as I'm now working full time in my business, there's things where I might be able to sit there and save £20 on something, but that might cost me an hour of my time, or it could be some little bits eat me up and get really niggly in my head. And it's just sitting there just thinking, actually, it's £200, get rid of that problem and then focus on making something that's going to make you £1,000, £10,000, £20,000, whatever. Because there's in the same amount of time that you can use to fix that small problem, or you could be working to fix that small little cost problem, you can be earning far more. The other one from London, which was good, was solutions, not problems. And it's really corny, but we had it written on our wall. And the long and short of it was, you've got to own your problems. So if you ever came across a problem, you ever screwed up, something isn't going to plan, something's not working, you've got to own that problem. So you turn around and tell someone, look, I screwed up, or this is happening, and I've got this answer, and this answer. And the chances are the answers that you've got aren't right. But we would hash them out together and we'd come up with a solution. So then by coming to a problem with a solution, then you're focusing on fixing stuff and focusing on moving forwards rather than dwelling on it. And especially from, and this is just, you know, kind of growth of myself, but in the first company that I worked for, when something went wrong or something wasn't quite right, rather than kind of take ownership and say, sorry, I've done something wrong, you'd end up, I would point fingers. And then in the second company, I was like, well, stop pointing fingers. Well, I mucked up, ask for a little bit of help. And then the last one, it was just like, I've mucked up, here's the fixes. And it's just a mindset change. But if you can get to the solutions, not problems, then you're going to be way ahead of yourself.
Yeah, just having that different frame of mind over it. How we're going to fix it. Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
Karen, is there anything you'd like to chip in on at the moment?
Hi. No, I was just listening interestingly. So I totally agree with you about what you said about focus time. Working for focused hours rather than 8 hours being, being busy really makes a difference. In our industry, too many people are busy being busy, but they don't achieve because they don't have that focus time mapped out saying, what tasks and activities they need to achieve in a given time. So it's really good hearing you say that. And I totally agree. Question wise, yeah, looping back round to deals now, I just think sometimes smaller deals are sweeter because you're in for less risk, particularly in the current climate.
Yeah, I agree.
I know you're itching to get onto the bigger deals, but with that comes a lot of risk, and also usually a longer time horizon before the profit comes to fruition. So you need something to carry on feeding you while that's running its cycle. So building your HMO portfolio makes a lot of sense, so that you've got the feeding continuing, ready to support you during that time. Yeah, I mean, you shared loads of golden nuggets there, and I think it's very inspiring. We've got a guy from IH Developments who's listening into a lot of what you've said. He's new to the space, so he's been picking up on a lot of what you've been saying, and yeah, I think everyone listening in is finding it incredibly useful. So typically, do you have like a favorite type of business model that you feel is something that you really enjoy doing? Because obviously if you spread yourself too thin working on every business model out there, you can be jack of all trades. Do you kind of focus on a particular type of business model to generate most of your profit?
Initially, yes. So the idea, the golden nugget is yes. So where I've worked for a freeholder, the initial idea and where I can see the biggest uplift in value where other people don't is short lease flats. So short lease flats and then turning them from 1 beds to 2 beds, because you're not only sorting a problem that other people can sort it, but a lot of people either lack the knowledge or lack the understanding of how you can put it together. Because the main understanding of it is that you need to have cash to be able to buy that property. But that's not true, because you can do it with cash, you could do it with bridging, you could serve all the correct notices in the right place, or you turn around and you find the property that's advertised as cash only, short lease, you approach the freeholder, and then you actually get the lease extension agreed before you purchased it, so then you can fund it normally anyway. So you can get the uplift as you're buying, because that's where most of the money is made, is when you buy. So you can do that, and then by turning something from a 1 bed to a 2 bed, like earlier I said about 50 meters squared, you can usually add a second bedroom in, and by doing that, you're forcing your appreciation. So in Southampton, a 1 bedroom flat is typically worth probably about 120. Maybe in the city centre, it's worth maybe 130, 140. But a 2 bedroom flat is probably worth between 150 and 170. So if you can take that short lease flat that's on the market, I don't know, say about maybe 80,000, you agree at 70, you extend the lease and then change it, you then get your 20% profit margin, and no one else has been able to do it. So that's something that as a strategy, that's something I really like. But Southampton, and this could just be an excuse, because excuses are just what I believe rather than what's actually out there. But Southampton, unlike quite a lot of other cities in the country, doesn't have that much Victorian housing stock. And so in quite a few cities, I'm not sure what Reading's like for it, But in somewhere like Southend is quite a good example, but there's a lot of Victorian houses that have been converted into 2 flats. And by having that, you end up with having a lot of short lease flats and properties like that. But in Southampton, I'm not quite sure why it didn't happen, but we don't have that type of property. It might be because there was a lot more bombing over here or whatever else, but that type of property doesn't tend to exist in as much structure. So that's that's probably one of my core ways of doing it, because I know how to do it quite well, I'd like to think. And then the other side is typically with any property is forcing the appreciation of it. So looking at space that other people haven't looked at and how to reconfigure it.
No, that's brilliant, because I knew you'd done quite a lot on short leasehold, and it really can be lucrative if you get it right. But equally, if you go in and you don't understand the implications, it can be horrible, and you can be stuck on bridging. You need to have the right forms agreed up front. Otherwise, you've got a period, 2 years, where you can't, request the extension. So having that core knowledge is key, right?
Yeah, and then the other bit, if anyone doesn't get the lease extension agreed up front, make sure you have an assignable Section 42 notice served, because that will then give you the ability, when you buy it, that assignable Section 42 then means you are then able to extend the lease without needing to wait 2 years. So you need, if anyone's thinking of doing short lease flats, it's an absolute minefield that you really need to be clued up with what you're doing, and you need a fantastic solicitor. Your run-of-the-mill high street, you may get 1 or 2 that are absolutely fantastic, but your run-of-the-mill high street solicitor just isn't going to cut it.
No, that's brilliant.
Can you recommend a solicitor?
I would say, and he'll probably quite like it, but there's a chap called Alex Rubin from First Quinton Solicitors. They're London-based, but they know their onions. Well, Alex definitely knows his onions. So.
Brilliant.
No, that's really useful. I've got one other thing, actually. I picked up on the fact you were talking about diversifying through business acquisition. It's actually something I'm looking at as well. And Sam herself, I know, is buying a couple of businesses, or holding the freehold of a couple of very, very viable businesses in all market conditions, because we know, the high street, the shape of it's changing. We know lots of services people are now getting online, but for example, you can't get your hair cut online. You can't get your nails done online. And there are several other services you can't do online. So coffee shops, for example, if you want to chat with somebody and meet, coffee shops where you can work, that kind of thing really works. So diversifying into the right type of business that's sustainable is key, right?
Most definitely. So I've looked at 2 different business models, but this is down the line, because at the moment, I need my blinkers on and my clarity just to stick at one thing. And I'm very good at going, woo, what else is it? No, stick to one thing.
And that's good. And that is where having your plan, your blueprint on when you're going to do stuff is good. Because yes, you're doing that, but that's later on. That's in year 2, year 3. And that's why having that blueprint to success underpinning what you're doing is just so important. Yeah. And that's brilliant, Tristan. Thank you ever so much. Sam, back to you.
I was going to say, I'll give you an idea that the ones that I have looked at, one is fish and chip shops, because the profit margin is ridiculous. And it's something that there's a lot of people who own those businesses tend to want to retire to exit the business. So a bit like with property, and the reason there's a crossover with property to business is you can use the same strategies that you're using to identify direct-to-vendor opportunities, the same kind of thing where you're looking to find a deal and be able to stack it up. You're using the same knowledge and principles, but just on a different type of acquisition. And so that was kind of worked with that. And then my next one was that I'm thinking of, and I need to do a lot more research and down the line into it, will end up being in-home care, because it ends up being both a subscription, well, almost a subscription model, where you're going to have that reoccurring income. And it's an unfortunate but sad model, because there's more people in the UK who are growing older, and there's more people that are going to need to look after them. And so it's both a growing and expanding market, whilst at the same time it's a reoccurring income model that if you can deliver something that's a really good standard, then you can actually care for someone and deliver something that you're doing anyway. And then there's a lot of people who also deliver that, who end up starting doing caring and they end up working in their business, delivering the caring whilst trying to manage people. There's people there who want to escape it. So anyway, that's completely off the property bandwagon, but it could be, I think, quite a lucrative but rewarding model to follow.
No, but what I'll just say before I know I said back to Sam, but very quickly on that, having diversification and having multiple streams, we all know is really great. But thank you, that is brilliant. So Sam, now back to you.
Tristan, I have a friend who does the in-home care business. Their business has been running probably about a year and it's booming. So if you ever want me to connect,
that would be good.
Then more than happy to do that. Send me a message so I don't forget. And funny you should say about the fish and chip shops, because I've had a number of emails in the last couple of months with loads of fish and chip shops for sale. I don't know what the price is. It's not what I'm looking for, so I've discarded it. But no idea what the sort of price is, whether it's sort of really good prices to do that. But
yeah, a lot of them seem to be struggling at the moment. So, well, I think people who want to sell them, there just isn't a market to sell a business at the moment in the main. So the prices on them have dropped. But the flip side of it is, in a recession, people like to have cheap treats, and more people are eating at home because they don't want to go out to restaurants. So if you manage to get into a market where you can target that, and the other bit is a lot of fish and chip shops are actually quite big. So if you can then split off space and then offer, say, other kitchen space out to, say, a secondary operator, then you can get rental income whilst you get your main income at the same time. So more revenue streams.
Yeah, awesome. So if people want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So usually I'm a bit of a dinosaur to an extent. So the best way is give me a phone call. And the phone number is 07704374411, or banging me an email, which is tg@zebrainvest.co.uk. Otherwise, you can find me on Facebook if you search ZebraInvest or zebrainvest.co.uk. And yeah, I say I'm a bit of a dinosaur with it because Instagram, I literally got my first Instagram account about a week ago. And I've got about 3 photos on there, but none property related. And yeah, I very much focus on what I'm doing, and most of the people I usually meet are through networking. But hey.
Yeah. I've been doing some social media training actually with a young lady in Bournemouth. She's been doing a group training thing, and she's been talking about the Instagram and things. So sessions are really good value if you want to go on, and it's like 1 hour a week on talking about different platforms: Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, that sort of thing.
Yeah. In all honesty, I don't have that much interest in it. It'll be one of those things that down the line someone else can do for me.
Yeah. So if you can find on the Property Angels page under our event, perhaps put your contact details in there so that people can find it. It's been great to hear from you. I love your background and what you've been doing and what your plans are for the future. I really enjoy your creative mind and how you think about things much differently to the majority of property investors. So it's been really good to talk about that a bit more, Tristan.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me too.
Oh, it's been brilliant, and I'm sure your target of the 9 HMOs is going to come around much quicker than we think. But thank you very much for your time. I know you've got a busy schedule today, so see you soon. Thank you.
Adios. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Sam.